Welcome to the discussion. My name is Jonathan Kay, and we have, I think, an hour to discuss the issue before us. And I am joined by my fellow Canadian, Terry Milewski, retired senior correspondent for CBC News and author of the Macdonald-Laurier Institute report, Khalistan, A Project of Pakistan. We are also joined by Gurdeep Randhawa, who is a German politician, part of Angela Merkel's ruling party, and will talk to us about the situation in Germany, which we were talking before the broadcast that Terry and I actually didn't know much about what was going on there, so that will be interesting. And Shipra Mathur, I hope I'm pronouncing that last name correctly, veteran journalist, formerly with Rajasthan Partika, one of the largest circulating Hindi newspapers in India, and currently a consulting editor with India America Today, and founding editor of penliteracy.com. Shipra, maybe I could start with you. This is an issue that I think flies under the radar in the Western foreign policy press, even in dedicated magazines like Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy, it's really covered. May I ask what the state of play is in India in terms of the Sikh nationalist question more broadly?
I think she's muted.
Oh, you might be muted, Ms. Mathur. I think you're...
I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh, so, okay.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. So Jonathan, so in the context of India, what I see that, recently India and Bangladesh celebrated 50 years of Bangladesh War of Liberation, which was the trigger for Zulfikar Ali Bhutto deciding to avenge for Bangladesh to tear off a piece of India by fueling the Khalistani separatist movement. And ever since the K2 plan to keep Indian peninsula perennially disturbed and bleeding through Kashmir and demand for separate Khalistan, it has been a designed agenda, as Larry has also clearly pointed out in his recent study and work on Khalistan's connection with Pakistan. And insurgency in Punjab was their mission success, but now this could be a forgotten agenda for India after 90s, when it all subsided and controlled, but not for its perpetrators. They find every opportunity to create disturbances and grab attention for a demand which will and can never ever be realized, as I understand it. And this how it became a point of discussion was that as you know that there was farmers' protest going on in India since November 2020. It was after the 3 farm bills which were introduced in India, the amendments were introduced, and there were dissatisfaction about these amendments, and the farmers were on roads and they were protesting against it. And since the larger part of procurement, food procurement, is done from Punjab farmers, so at this moment, this protest became a ground for Khalistanis, because they apparently have this clear demand, and their target is, of course, its population of Punjab. And majorly in this farmers' protest, the participation was majorly from Punjab farmers. So this became a ground for them since in November last year, when this whole started, this protest started in India. And therein, whenever they see unrest anywhere in India, this becomes a favorable ground for the criminal elements. And Khalistani militants, they found a ground to draw attention to their cause. And there are clear evidences, Jonathan, about the Indian security agencies clearly pointing out that how they have very strategically designed this whole module, terror module. And though NIA had started, National Investigative Agency of India had started a heavy crackdown on the militancy perpetrated by Khalistani separatists and secessionists, in past 5-6 years, especially in Pakistan, they have huge activities. They are supporting local criminals, they are supporting drug and arm dealers there. And then they try to identify, criminal elements and who could be their easy targets. And this farmer protest actually became their easy target, because they were huge population and majorly from Punjab, the Sikh population. So this is how they grab full attention of the global community. And there are very clear evidences that a lot of money has poured in, from all across, from Canada, from UK, and from all the outfits of this Khalistani network. So I think,
if I can just, because I think some of our audience might not be specialists in the area, but just to draw the lens back a little bit, just in terms of the background, and not maybe for now at least, not so much sort of the details of the cross-border encouragement for militant activity. I'm thinking about the situation in India more generally. The narrative that is often discussed, at least in Canada, when we talk about this, is that the Khalistani movement became extremely popular in some sections of the Sikh community in the 1980s and then the 1990s, but is much less popular now, and that there is much more a sense of Sikh political integration in India. Putting aside maybe some of the efforts to stir up radical elements, is it broadly true that in India, the situation I just described is still the case?
Pardon? What was the last part?
That the situation I just described of Sikh integration, moderate influences within the Indian political culture, that broadly speaking, it is not the same in terms of a mass movement as it was maybe in the late 1980s and the 1990s.
Absolutely. So Khalistan movement is nowhere there in people's psyche, in political target. I mean, Khalistani movement doesn't, has lost its ground. That's very clear. But they have, yeah.
So maybe we'll get to the other panelists soon, but in terms of the cross-border encouragement to militant activity, is this directly analogous to the claims that were made against Pakistan in regard to Islamist radicalism, both in Afghanistan and in Kashmir? Is there a rough analogy, would you say, geopolitically between those two encouragements from Pakistan?
Yes, because SJF, which is a body which fueled this whole the attention and these disturbances in using the farmers' protest, as Larry has also pointed out, that this Sikh Liberation Front, I mean, they have found a lot of support from Pakistan, and especially when the Pakistan in past 2 years allowed their offices to operate from the land of Pakistan. So there's very clear link, because the entire this referendum 2020, which they initiated to seek the opinions of Sikh fraternity, whether they support this Khalistani movement, and to draw their attention again and revive this movement in a way. So this was the trigger point, and which was clearly fueled by ISI, and there are clear links.
Okay, and ISI being the Pakistani Military Intelligence Service, which again, just trying to make this accessible for as many people as possible. If I could bring Gurdeep Randhawa into the conversation, I'd love to talk a little bit about the views among Germany's small, but as I understand, substantial Sikh population. But in Sikh social media channels and in Sikh media, do you see this issue as a potential radicalizing element? Because of course now in the age of social media, these ideas and these movements cross borders. Is this something that has come across your radar as a community leader and a politician?
Yes, I can just only say, because if I just talk to you like German politician, then this is not valid for that. But if we just generally talk about the Sikh society or Sikh community in this country, I will say yes, this problem is as it is there because of the last 40-50 years. None of the issues raised by the Sikh community Indian before, which was promised before the India's independence and after the India's independence, were not fulfilled. And due to that, because if the government, if this is the actually failure of the government, due to that, this 1984, the Blue Star operation happened, you know.
Yeah.
Then, and this is the turning point where the Sikhs just turned towards thinking of independent six-state Khalistan out of India. And before that, if you just see, because I'm not talking as a Khalistani, and I'm not talking as a Sikh politician, but which are the facts which I have just also seen in past and personally have experience with that. And I will say that the Sikhs are really worldwide got united when the Blue Star Operation 1984 happened in June 1984. And this was even today's government is clearly mentioning that this was the blunder mistake done by that time. Due to that, still the people of Punjab are suffering, and the government as well, because defense forces they were deployed in Punjab for many years. And this but tragedy with the Punjab is that this was the defense is the central government issue normally. And if in the central government issue, that means that they sent this all, they deployed these all defense forces, paramilitary forces to Punjab. For what reason? Just for protecting the territory from the neighbor countries, because this was, as Shipra was telling, that this is a Pakistan-sponsored issue. And what happened during those days, that all the expenditures which is just which money was spent on this all problem to solve this problem, these were all happened because of they were protecting the internal security and the outside security with the paramilitary forces. And these all expenses they have just brought to the state of Punjab, you know, and this is a huge money, you know, and due to that, none of the issue is properly solved. But with the new government, we hope with the new government, we hope that this problem could be solved. But until now, we were very much opportunist after November 9th, 2019, when the Kartarpur corridors were opened. We thought that, okay, this is one light, that this reason will turn in the peaceful time, or peaceful situation, or region will be developed, economically developed. But this was not happened because of the pandemic problem, and then the late, so the same, in the same 1 year after, the farmer agitation is started. And due to that, naturally the Khalistan problem was there, and that was just flamed again. And I give the Shipra also right. This is this problem is there, and this could only be solved with the dialogues and with the think tank, as you are just initiative for the agenda Khalistan and the West, because the West has not so much experience with the Khalistan in India, because this is the Indian territory. If anything will be solved, that will be solved within India. This will not be solved out of India. But as an outsider, we can only suggest that this is the right way, please do this, and this will help to the country. And this will, and when any successive move will be just started, or any good advisory will just will be given to the government. They are also have also top advisors, even top journalists. All of you are well think tank journalists, and you can also send your message that this and this problem is really an issue and must be solved properly, so that the people can live there peacefully. And because the Sikhs are the backbone of the country, you know, Sikhs are backbone of the country in defense, in agriculture, in all fields. And Sikhs are always loyal. Sikhs will be loyal to the country. Sikhs will not do anything against the country, but at least the fulfillment of the promises which were just made before and after, that must be happened in my view.
Well, thank you. Terry, I'd like to bring you into the conversation, and because you're my fellow Canadian, I'm going to be casual and use your first name and just call you Terry. We just heard a reference to Operation Blue Star, which was the code name for the military operation taken out by the Indian military in 1984, the attack on the Golden Temple in the Punjab. And of course, thousands of people died. I'm wondering, Terry, if you could talk a little bit, trace the arc of how expatriate Sikh politics in Canada, and maybe elsewhere, because I know that in your books you've written a little bit about other countries. Could you trace the arc of how that movement affected expatriate Sikh politics in countries such as Canada?
Well, it's always been transnational ever since 1971. I think it was October 1971 that Dr. Jagjit Singh Chauhan, the patriarch, I guess, of the Khalistan movement, bought an advertisement in the New York Times in October of 71, I believe, announcing the start of the new nation of Khalistan, the birth of a new nation. We exist, he said, and he named himself the first president of Khalistan. And
where did he live? Where did he live?
He lived in London principally. He lived in exile in London. At the end of his life, he returned to India. But my point is that it's always been a transnational, an attempt to draw in the rest of the world, and it's always been an idea that's especially strong in the diaspora, notwithstanding that today it's extremely weak within Punjab, where 75% roughly of all the world's Sikhs still live. So to approach, I mean, let me take a stab at the original question. Are the India's Western allies helping the Khalistanis? And I would simply say the answer to that is yes, but. And I'll give you a couple of buts to illustrate what I mean. The first is that Western politicians, who obviously have an influence, they are helping the Khalistanis by pandering to them, but they're not helping very much, because as soon as the first whiff of trouble, they run a mile away. As soon as an Indian politician calls them out, catches them with their hands in the vote bank cookie jar, they disown the Khalistanis. So no, we're not Khalistanis, we are for a united India. So at that point, if you're a real Khalistani, you say, well, thanks a lot for your so-called support. That's just great. So in that sense, it's a bit of a farce. It's not about creating an independent state. It's about getting votes in domestic politics for the politicians that pander to the Khalistanis. And by treating Khalistanis as though they speak for all the Sikhs, which of course they certainly don't, which suggests my second but. Yes, this pandering goes on in Canada, the UK, to a lesser extent apparently in Germany. But the reason is that the politicians who do this really have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, you won't go broke betting that they are completely ignorant.
If I could just ask you or cite a specific example, I think it was probably about 15 years ago here in Canada that it was not uncommon for mainstream Canadian politicians to attend, for instance, rallies or parades in British Columbia, where there are all sorts of flags and emblems and pictures of martyrs, as they are described by some, that people in the know realized were emblematic of highly militant movements. But you'd have some guy who looked like you and me, giving out hot dogs and pins and brochures, and he had no idea. He didn't speak Punjabi or anything like that.
Well, it's worse than you say, because it still goes on. They still go to the parades. They still go. For example, you're probably thinking of a very important Gurdwara temple in Surrey, British Columbia, the Dashmesh Darbar Temple, where they still have, today and every day, and have had for years, a full-size portrait of a fanatical killer, Tovinder Parmar, the mastermind of the Air India bombing. to be honored and worshipped as a great martyr,
but
a
this is
hero
also
of the Sikh people.
always bothered me because, and I'm sure people on both sides will complain about this analogy, but if there were a mosque in Toronto that had a picture of Osama bin Laden up on it, it would be all over the media.
Of course, and it is. I mean, it's an absolute disgrace to Canada that this goes on, but more particularly that it's like pulling teeth to get Canadian politicians to object to it. Parmar is the worst mass murderer in Canadian history. He slaughtered 331 completely innocent people who had nothing whatsoever to do with the Sikh struggle for an independent state. And he is revered and glorified as a martyr of the Sikh nation. It is a celebration of mass murder. It's in your face. It's a belligerent twisting of the knife in the victims' families. And you cannot get Canadian politicians to say, I'm sorry, I'm not going anywhere near that temple. I will not go to their Vaisakhi parades. You can't get them to say that.
If I could bring Shipra Mathur back into the conversation, is it a, I think I know the answer, is it a subject of frustration and perhaps exasperation among the journalistic and political class in India that the kind of phenomenon Terry describes does go on, and that we don't call out Pakistan or maybe internal agitators within countries like India for this sort of thing, and in a way provide them with a kind of mainstream encouragement by tolerating their presence within mainstream politics in Canada? How widely noted is this phenomenon in India?
Jonathan, because this vote bank politics has bothered Indian common population, to the core, and it has been a cause of frustration for common people in India. That for the sake of just maybe vested interest or hobnobbing with the high-profile people, they don't really care about the interest of the people. Actually they are voted to serve on. So this is definitely a cause of frustration for for the people who are really concerned about the safety and security and peace of the country. At the same time, as you are asking that whether it's a cause of frustration for the journalists also who see it from a close, it is definitely because those who are sitting, because the people we elect, and we have been seeing them in Punjab, because that is the core attention when we are talking about Khalistani movement, and the leadership there, the political leadership there, they hobnob with the people who are the perpetrators. They meet up and they go away. And I mean, these kind of coverages do find place in English media, but local media, and they don't really care. So I suppose that in during this time, especially in farmers' movement, at least we have started talking about the repercussions of these kind of moments and how we should be very vigilant about these kind of instances when the indigenous issues, when the internal issues are hijacked by these kind of criminal elements and using social media so powerfully. At the same time, Jonathan, I would also like to point out, how they use these, social media to propagate their idea, and what kind of followers they had. At the same time, there was counter propaganda to speak against Khalistani movements also. But I was just watching, those platforms. There were hardly any views or any supporters of the people who are raising their voice against Khalistani movements. So these kind of criminal elements, they draw a lot of attention. But at the same time, what I'm seeing, because as you referred yourself that you have been into intelligence, I suppose that whatever I'm getting a feel through people who are working at the intelligence level, and a couple of my friends also, I talk to them, what's going on. So they are saying that we have no clear idea that how to act upon it, because we have absolute idea, the politicians know, the people know that what kind of a nexus that has existed always, and that gives them a very favorable ground to come in, to operate, and to go away, without any action. Though the NIA and these police agencies and security agencies are must be doing their work, I don't know, but it is But when this kind of movement at the level when the farmers' protest was going on, if they could hijack it, we can understand that what kind of action we really missed out on. So that's a serious concern, definitely.
So just to bring Gurdeep Randhawa in, and again, the subject of our discussion is Khalistan and the West, are allies complicit in encouraging a secessionist movement in India? When I think about complicity, I think about the language that we use to discuss our relationship with the world. And as Terry can attest, after 9/11, the language we used was the language of terrorism, and sometimes excessively so. George W. Bush was, "Are you with us? Are you against us?" Everything was about terrorism. Of course, terrorism is an extremely serious subject, but progressives, liberals objected, sometimes with good reason, that, well, there are other things to think about. Now we live in a different age. It's 20 years later, and often, instead of terrorism, we talk about racism, which another very serious subject, but which some people believe sometimes goes too far, and there are other elements to talk about. Mr. Randhawa, is this sometimes the lens through which politicians in Germany see things when they talk about foreign policy? You talked about how Germany, there's no place for hatred and racism and such, but is this sometimes the way that politicians are making decisions? Is that they want to make sure, with good motives, that, well, we want to fight racism against Sikh people, so as a result, I'm going to maybe sometimes as a result of that good intention, they maybe naively support maybe any group that purports to be fighting injustice?
Well, if we are just talking about the racism, the racism is a word which is just everywhere. Someone is just being discriminated because of his color. One is discriminated because of he's looking different. Someone is looking because in Germany, this is normally by law, this is banned. But there are certain groups, there are certain political groups. This problem is there, but the publicly we will say that I give myself the example from myself. I was the first person with the turban who elected with the ruling, with the CDU, Christliche Democratic Union in Germany. The time when I was declared as a candidate, then there was a huge reaction came from in the Facebook that this Muslim person is getting because they thought that I am Muslim guy, but and then 3 days this was terrible fight. Actually, this was unexpected because my family was telling me, why you are contesting this election? Please take your name back. Because I was, and this was for me was one bitter experience in my life. When you continue day and night, you are suffering this, that the people are just mixing my identity with the Islam, because the Islam has right now a problem worldwide. I'm not going to say anything against, but this they have to understand. But what is going wrong with them? But I can say as a Sikh, what is going wrong with us? This racism I have suffered because of this. But when later on in the German society, when they came to know that this is a Sikh, he is from India, and if we just compare a Sikh with the Muslim, this is the insult. So this type of then comments came in the Facebook publicly. And this turned total picture within next 3 days, And then at the end, then I gave my one statement that what is Sikh? Sikh is a student. Sikh is a student who learned whole of his life, but good things. A student never learned bad things, And this is my religion, Sikh. Sikh is and from the Guru Nanak till Guru Gobind Singh until now, we are good with the basis of the good teachings. We are proving in the world. If we are in Germany, if we are doing good, one day, like Mother Teresa, she was also accepted in Calcutta. She was also facing the same problems as we are facing in Westerns. And Mother Teresa was who made Mother Teresa from sister to mother. This was the Indians. because she served the people like that way. And that's why that's why I'm saying that the Sikhs are not believe in this. Sikhs believe everyone for us is brother and sister and in one race. As a human this being, we have one race. We are not against to anyone. Hindus are my brother. Hindus are my Muslim are my brother. Christians are my brother. All human beings are my brothers. I don't want to say particularly for one bad, but one thing is very clear that the Sikhs after when the Maharaja Ranjit Singh, he was also very good ruler in fact in Punjab. There was Muslim and Hindus, they were foreign minister and they were defense minister and they were all policy makers. They were Hindus and Muslims. And Sikhs were also journals. French were journals under his ruling state in Punjab. But we lost everything when Maharaja Ranjit Singh expired in 1839. After that, this is disaster. Until today, we are living in the disaster because we are not progressing. We are we are just on the down.
Okay, well, his history is a big place, so I might have to come back to that. But Terry, I want to. That's really interesting stuff there. But one thing that's really interesting to me about the Sikh community in Canada is, putting aside the issue of militancy versus non-militancy, it is possibly the most deeply politically engaged immigrant community in Canada on a per capita basis. And one thing that's emerged is Canadian politicians, and I think Western politicians more generally, they love the idea of having like kind of a simple representative view from a community. Like they love, the liberals and the conservatives do it too, is they love to have like, a Jewish community group that can say, well, what's the Jewish view on this? Or what's the Muslim view on this? And what's the Hindu view on this? And I think they do that to all groups. And it's understandable from a politician's perspective. But with the Sikh community, it's been complicated, I think, here in Canada, because the Sikh community has been so politically engaged. But you've had different views. I mean, we had a premier of British Columbia who's an extremely moderate Sikh, an unturbaned, he happened to be unturbaned, if I remember. He was beaten up by, I think with a lead pipe, if I remember, by more militant Sikhs. So you have at least two constituencies within the Sikh community, both in BC, here in Ontario, that have fought to become the sort of quasi-official representative of the Sikh community more generally at the federal and provincial level. Terry, what's your sense of which community has now, or in past years, been more influential in guiding Canadian policy?
Well, I think it's, once again, it's really worse than you described, because the fight is over. The Khalistani Sikhs have managed to convince a lot of very naive and ignorant politicians that they speak for the Sikhs.
Even though arithmetically they don't.
No, well, I mean, okay, brief diversion on arithmetic. In the last Punjab election in 2017, the only separatist party won, get this, 0.32% of the vote, a fraction of 1%, not even 1/3 of 1%. Electoral repudiation does not get any more eloquent than that. So let's be clear that for the majority of Sikhs in Punjab, where it counts, and that's 75% of the world's Sikhs, this is a dead issue. Nevertheless, Khalistanis have managed to convince way too many politicians, all parties, that they are the authentic voice of the Sikhs, which is absurdly false on the face of it. And the election results I just gave you, and it was the same in the last national election, the same in the previous state election, going back 30 years and more, 32 years now. They can't win a seat, the separatists in India. But they have convinced politicians that, we are the voice of the Sikhs. And there is a kind of very subtle, well, not very subtle racism going on, where the white politicians stereotype Sikhs by saying, well, all Sikhs are separatists. So if you're an anti-separatist, you're a racist.
But that's a really good point, and I'm conscious of the fact that when you and I are white people and we're talking about a geopolitical subject that is not in our corner of the world, but this is something we can speak with authority on, which is the desire of white politicians. There's a certain idea, I get the sense, and journalists too, that the more militant you are and the more angrier you are, the more somehow culturally or political authentic you are. Is that what's going on?
Well, I mean, I'll give you just one brief, very bizarre example, which is a very recent vintage: the expulsion from the ruling Liberal Party of Canada of the Brampton Member of Parliament, Ramesh Sangha. Sangha grew up in Punjab. He's a friend of the current Chief Minister of Punjab, Captain Amarinder Singh, who's a fervently anti-separatist Sikh elected by millions of Sikhs in Punjab. And Sangha was booted out of the Liberal Party on the grounds that he had differed with a couple of cabinet ministers, accused him of Khalistani sympathies. And a white disciplinarian of the Liberal Party, the government chief whip, they call him, the chief disciplinarian of the Liberal MPs caucus in Parliament, Mark Holland, declared that Sangha had to go out of the Liberal Party. He was getting kicked out because he had made these allegations against his fellow MPs because of their background. And we in the Liberal caucus stand foursquare against racism and intolerance. So it's very, very clear what this white MP was alleging, namely that this Sikh MP was a racist against his fellow Sikhs. Now, this is utterly bizarre. It's absurd.
Well, it is utterly bizarre, but maybe
it happens. It happens all the time.
But maybe it's less bizarre for anybody who's been following developments on university campuses and the wider ideological milieu. Shipra, I'm going to come back to you. What can moderate forces within countries like Canada do? What's your perspective? I'm thinking of a guy like Ujjal Dosanjh. So Ujjal Dosanjh, I'm not sure if that name rings a bell with all the panelists, but he was the former BC Premier, moderate Sikh, paid a price for his moderation within the Sikh community. And, you know, he's still around and he's watching all these developments, I guess as a retired politician, and he must be completely exasperated by this sort of thing. But is there anything from your perspective as somebody following the geopolitics of India that moderates within these expatriate communities can do?
I really don't know what exactly could be on our plans, but I do know that because when we are talking about this Khalistani radicals and separatists, this started from a small idea. Somebody shared at some forum that this idea, which everybody knows that it is neither, it cannot be converted into reality, this. But when one thought, we carry, and we carry it very strongly with this kind of a conviction. So I think the whole maybe diaspora community and those people like you who are, part of maybe, think tank and, creating an ambience wherein we all come on a forum that, what could be our common goal, when the whole world is talking about sustainable development goals and climate change and whatnot. I think without peace and harmony, nothing can be achieved. So what I believe is that educating people about reality, opening the doors of, facts and, we might not forget history, but it is not at this moment, it is so pertinent to talk about the future. What will be the future of the country? What will be the future of the new population, and how they should get rid of all those ideas which maybe, maybe bothering them. The history must be bothering them. the discriminations they must have faced, at the hands of, the then politics or the Operation Blue Star or whatnot. But, we have to look ahead with a common interest of how this peace and harmony can be created in the whole world. And I think talking and educating and opening the doors of information, that's so important, because the social media has given us a tool. For example, in India, Jonathan, I would like to point it out that, India is undergoing a lot of transformation in terms of policies. We have for example, the farm laws were there. Recently, an IT Act was amended. Recently, the FCRA Foreign Currency Regulation Act was amended. So that actually helped in a way to track where the funds were flowing in. What were the linkages between one body and the people who are supporting these kind of movements or thoughts from outside. So the policies and the transparency and the technology is giving us these tools that we can educate ourselves that what is the reality. And once we know that what are the hazards of not knowing ourselves, not knowing that what we have to do ahead, because we cannot go on and on and on with this kind of violence, and with this kind of seeds in already sowed in our brains, that because Khalistani movement had lost ground. How it got revived all of a sudden was just a thought, and people could gather and could talk about it, and the social media could propagate it. So I think we need to come together, because we work in silos, absolute silos. When you initiated this discussion, I shared with a lot of my journalist friends, in groups. I've been a part of Indian Federation of Working Journalists. I shared in that group where thousands of journalists, from all across India are part of that group. But none of them actually showed interest that this was an area of interest we must all be talking about. We must all be getting interested in. So we are all working in so much of vacuum in silos that these kind of issues, unless they directly bother us, they are actually in close proximity to us. We are totally detached. We might be on Facebook, we might be on Twitter, we might be on social media, connecting with friends. But what about the issues that are larger issues, because that are affecting us directly in some way or the other?
Okay,
so I think talking about it is more important. Yes.
If I could just interject on the subject of the institutional background, because we've been talking a lot about ideas and constituencies, maybe in a broad way. There are groups, and I'm thinking of groups like SFJ, which, as I understand, SFJ it's been banned in India. Is that right?
Yes, it has been banned, and when it launched its website also recently, just nearing farmers' agitation, within 4 days time, the Indian government banned the website also.
And that's
why I'm referring to this new IT Amendment Act also, because this is giving us power to control what kind of information to be floated, though it is in direct conflict with freedom of speech in a way or expression, but that is under debate. But these kind of tools are there because of which we are able to track who is doing what. So definitely it was banned. Yeah.
And SFJ seeks for justice, which, as I understand, one of the difficulties in discussing these is sometimes they have international branches and offshoots. Mr. Randhawa, I'm wondering if you could comment on the institutional situation in terms of groups that either represent or purport to represent people of Sikh descent in Germany. Is this something that you monitor? I'm guessing that there are a number of groups that are competing, and all of them have wonderful sounding names. I mean, this is true of all communities. Sikhs for Justice. Who doesn't like justice? How much do you think these groups and their lobbying efforts, how much do they shape the way Western politicians, at least in your country and in your party, think of how they should address the geopolitics in Punjab?
Mr. Jonathan, I will just explain only in few words, because actually this question can only answer the person who is really in the picture. And actually, I am in the German politics. I am not in the picture of any this institute or any this organization. But what I hear, normal as a Sikh, what I am hearing here, okay, this issue is there. people are protesting on all the time when the 15th August or 26th of January, which I think that this is continued after the Blue Star operation since 1984. And then these all groups are come together. How they are with each other combined, that on that point of view, I cannot give you any inside story or inside view. But one thing I can only, I'm agree with Shipra, that if today the persons who are settled down in these countries, we are talking about the West, from the West, not even 10% people will just go back to return to India. But we are all, the Sikhs are concerned that how we can develop that reason. And I think this is one of the good move. What is just recently happened. This is, I would like to say one thing. This is regarding the Quad agreement. The Quad agreement, because we cannot go 70 years back, because 150 years back, the Sikhs were ruling very big, like a big country, from Delhi till Kabul and Kandahar and Kashmir part, these were all under the Sikh rules. And that state we cannot reunite today, because they are all internationally recognized territory. And even Canada, even US, even Germany, we cannot interfere into this internal matter of India or for the Indian territory. For me, it's only to say that the Quad, how we can develop this reason, how we can protect the Sikh community, because the Sikhs were not increased number-wise in Pakistan. Because when the India got independence, the Sikhs were living in Pakistan. I think this number is very, very, very less, because many of them were converted. The same faith was with the Hindus. The same faith is today with the Christians. But this one thing is wondering me here, why this has not happened. East Pakistan, I mean, we are talking, Shipra,
Bangladesh.
was telling about the Bangladesh. Yeah. And in the Bangladesh, this type of incident never happened in Bangladesh in few years. But why it is happening only in West Pakistan? This is very, we have to understand this, because in Pakistan territory, the Sikhs have left each and everything in Pakistan, like the kingdom of Sikhs, Lahore, from Maharaja Ranjit Singh, this is in Pakistan. The birthplace of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, Nankana Sahib, this is also in Pakistan. Mostly the Sikh history is just left in Pakistan. That's why the Pakistan is important for the Sikhs. And that's why the Pakistan is using Sikh for maybe for their own purposes, or they are helping or whatever. I don't want to get involved in this all things. But we have to understand. But we have we thought that within that Indian, because my father, he was in the Indian Army. My father was very special officer in the Indian Army, and even till date, he has a lot of respect. He is no more. And myself, I got study in the military institute, because we were. This was the trend in the Sikhs, that if in the family we are 2 or 3 sons, at least 2 are in the army. One was in the Indian Army, or one was in Navy or Air Force. This was the trend. More than 20% after 1947, the Indian defense was where the Sikhs were just engaged. But today, what happened after 73 years, we are only 3 or 4% we are in the defense services. This is also tragedy of in India. That's why Sikhs has no future in Pakistan. In Afghanistan, you see every day what they are doing. Even Sikhs priests, girls were just kidnapped, and they got married, and they were converted to Islam.
Well, it seems like much of the many developments in that part of the world seem to be driven by Pakistan's attitude toward India and its ongoing efforts to maybe use other countries as a sort of chessboard for its maneuverings against India.
But sorry, sir, one thing here, because Terry was telling, I know Mr. Sangha very well. He has a lot of respect for me. We met us on the event of 9th November when the Kartarpur corridor was opened. and I had a very good words with him. I understand his, but we cannot say that that because if I myself, if I am sitting in my county and I am continuously talking about my Sikh community, nobody is going to listen to me. Okay, I have to raise the things which are concerned and which are really there, which are just which make use, you know. If I'm totally talking about the Sikhs when I am sitting among all Germans, you know, then that means I am racist of their races. If they are continually talking about me, then they are also they are. I cannot say they are racist because this is normal then. That's why we have to make one view how we can dwell. The reason I am totally with the Shipra, we have to think it today. What is the fate of Sikhs? What is the future of next Punjab? What is the fate of that region? And this can only be happen if they are economically again come get stronger, as this was before the in 1947 and till 1966.
Okay, so I'm gonna just in the time we have left, Terry, I'd just like to ask you, because we're talking a little bit about, well, we just started to talk a little bit about some of the practical difficulties in integrating so many of these ideas in a platformer for a politician. I want to ask you briefly about Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh is, I think people on this call will know, the turbaned Sikh leader. I believe he's the first turbaned Sikh leader of a national political party here in Canada. He leads the NDP, the New Democratic Party. It's a left-wing party. And there was an episode in which on camera on CBC, Terry asked what I thought were extremely appropriate questions about some of the comments that Mr. Singh has made in the past in regard to some of the issues we're discussing, in particular the Air India bombing. And infamously during that conversation, live TV, I think it was, Mr. Singh was very evasive about some fairly basic questions about who blew up Air India. It was the worst terrorist attack in Canadian history. However, I just want to maybe ask Terry, do you have some sympathy for a politician like Jagmeet Singh, who walks a fine line? On the other hand, he does have to be a universalist. He has to represent all his constituents. He has to run a national party. On the other hand, he's also, I mean, he was elected leader, you're not supposed to talk about it, but it's true. He was elected leader of the NDP in large part, not exclusively, but in large part on the strength of thousands of, in some cases, newly christened NDP members who happen to be Sikh. And they expected him to carry water for a sort of hardline approach, in some cases, on Sikh identity and Sikh political demands. Is it tough? I mean, I know that you got into it at the time, and I thought you were unfairly treated. People accused you of being racist when you weren't. But do you have some sympathy for Sikh politicians in the West who have to walk this fine line?
No.
Okay.
Well, thanks. This has been a great panel. No, I don't have that sympathy, and I'll tell you why. Because it's based on an illusion. It is an illusion that politicians of whatever background are constrained. They have to appeal to the militant wing. They have to appeal to the Khalistani wing of the Sikh community. They don't. You mentioned Ujjwal Assange a moment ago, a moderate Sikh, who defied the Khalistanis openly, nearly cost him his life, as you pointed out.
He got hit in the head with a pipe.
Yes, he was beaten over the head with a pipe by a guy who tried to kill him, and he has 84 stitches to hold his scalp together. He was lucky to survive. And while publicly standing against the militant members of his own community, he was elected and re-elected for 20 years. Or take another example on the provincial scene in British Columbia, Dave Hare, the son of a witness in the Air India case who was murdered, Tara Singh Hare. His son, Dave Hare, was an elected member of the British Columbia legislature, publicly stood against the militants who murdered his dad, and was elected and re-elected for 11 years in that case. Ramesh Sangha, I mentioned a moment ago, the guy just booted out of the Liberal Party, elected in Brampton, Ontario, which is probably after Surrey, the most highly populated Sikh district in Canada's political scene. So don't tell me that you need to kowtow to the Khalistanis to get elected in Canada. That's an illusion.
But only, I guess I was referring to the specific case where Singh, we're talking here about Jagmeet Singh.
Yes.
I mean, he did come to power in the NDP in large part on the basis of that constituency. So maybe he feels a certain loyalty to that constituency. And I'm certain, by the way, I'm certainly not accusing everyone in the NDP who supported Singh of being a radical, but like there is this feeling in politics that, you know, if you're a conservative and you got, you know, support from the Heritage Foundation or whatever in the United States, you have to take their ideas seriously. Like, is there an exit strategy for someone like Jagmeet Singh? Can he walk this back?
If anyone could, he could. If anyone could, he could. If you or I stood for election and made this kind of speech, we might have trouble. But for Jagmeet Singh, whose bona fides as a member of the Sikh community are beyond question, he would be the one who could stand up, for example, and say, look, we are shooting ourselves in the foot as a community by publicly celebrating as a great hero Canada's worst mass murderer, the Air India bomber. If anyone could say that, it would be him, and it might have a dramatic effect. So far, no sign that he's going to do it.
Well, I think the hour is over, and I think that might be all the time we have. And at this point, I think I would invite the organizer to provide instructions on. I will say goodbye to all the panelists, and I'll just remind people of who they are. So if they want to pursue them, follow them on their social media accounts. We have, starting from right to left on my screen, we have Shipra Mathur, veteran journalist. We have been listening to Gurdeep Randhawa, part of Angela Merkel's ruling CDU party in Germany, and my fellow Canadian, Terry Milewski, very well-known author, CBC journalist, based here in Canada like me. My name is Jonathan Kay. So mine might be the last voice you hear, but unless the organizers come in. But thank you very much to all the panelists. I think this has been a lot of fun and very interesting. So I appreciate it.
Thanks all. Thank you.
Thank you.